Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don Hannon, Chief Operating Officer of the Jewish Federation. Hopefully, I know most of you on the webinar today. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it off to Greg Yowitz now and let him welcome everyone. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Greg Yowitz, Board Chair of the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, and I just want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today on session 2 about HMLC and the evolution and the new museum that we're in the process on, and really excited for where we are. I hope you'll share in that excitement as you learn more today from the team. So again, thank you for being here and being a part of the community. And I look forward, as you, to seeing the rest of the presentation. So, Don, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, Greg, thanks a lot. Again, thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I know there's a lot of folks particularly interested in today's session. I want to just remind everyone we are doing this in webinar format so we can facilitate the flow of the meeting. If I can ask the panelists, everybody to mute for now, please. We're getting a little feedback. Thank you. Anyway, we're doing it in webinar format. And the reason we do that is so that we can get through the content, and we do ask everyone to submit questions via chat. As last week, we will follow this session up with a survey. We did get a lot of great responses to last week's survey, and we'll be tabulating those and going through those. And really, the other question we were asked is, how are we going to use those surveys? Well, there'll be feedback to the team, and we'll look for trends and real strong opinions on things, and particularly about content and vision and things like that. And we've had a lot of great feedback so far. I will say the support. Thank everyone. The first survey, the initial numbers look like there was a great support for the mission vision that we talked about last week. Just to remind everyone before I hand it off, again, we'll do a survey after this session. And again, those responses are so important to us, and we do appreciate that. That survey will probably go out in the next day or so. One of the things I thought we would do before we dug into the content of the main exhibit, before I hand it to Dan, is just to give you a quick overview of the building and an update on the building. So if we go to the next slide, please. Yeah, one more, please. There we go. So I'll do this quickly. This is the main entry to the building. Again, as you'll see in a minute, I think everybody's seen a lot of this. This is where we landed after several iterations of design, and we're excited. You know, the main distinguishing feature is the black slate architectural design image that really reflects the idea of shattered lives, broken glass, that will really kind of be the mark of the, if you will, of the museum. We'll go to the next slide, please. Quickly, this is just, I think both people have seen this. You can see this is, again, we have purchased the lot at Schutz and Lindbergh from the J, so we own it now. And so it's a part of the project. You can see the blue areas on here of what's being renovated and the existing Kaplan Feldman, the spot building. So you can see the addition on the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. One of the things we're excited about also is that if you'll see on the bottom, we are planning to have 2 electric car charging stations, and we're excited to try to really be forward thinking in that, and realize that a lot of new installations are doing those things, and we thought it would be a great idea to add to our project as well. You can also see at the top the memorial garden on the, sorry about that, on the top you can see the memorial garden that butts up to the Covenant property. So again, we're excited about moving forward, and you should start to see dirt turn in the next 30 days on that lot. Next slide, please. One of the things I think is important, and you can see the blue area again is really the area. This is the first floor, the upper level of the museum. Section B is what is really has been historically the museum area. It's about 7,700 square feet. For now, that includes the auditorium, offices. The change begins with me. That will be 100% exhibit space, and that's the area we're particularly going to talk about in today's presentation with the team. The other thing to note is you can see section C, we talk about the impact lab. That's about a fifth the size. It's about 1,600 square feet. But it will be really packed full of content and an area that really works in conjunction with the main museum. The top will have a multi-purpose room, section E with retractable seating, hopefully a stage. A will be our lobby, and then you can see some offices and small offices. Most of the offices will be relocated to the Federation building. But we'll also, you can see, we are going to have an area that we're considering having a retail space for. And then, of course, as you come into the building, I guess I'm working backwards. You'll see we do have a really significant security space. It's unfortunate in these times, but we do have to have that, which will have security equipment with X-ray machine and scanners. So we're excited. Oh, and down to the bottom, the D is the classrooms, and we will have 2 classrooms that with a lot of functionality. Each will have a sink in it and really be able to use for programming and a lot of other things. Really, so if you're looking, really section C and D is what is now the current Brodsky Library space. And if we go to the next slide, this is the lower level. You can see at the top left corner, we're going to have a smaller space, but we are going to have a space for the library. We are reducing the number of volumes. Next to that will be archives. So we are going to have an archive space, and then we have space. The Jewish war heroes, the Jewish veterans are going to be moving their space, and we're going to have a display area for them on the lower level. This is, by the way, the lower level. And you can see the steps towards the front of the building. And then the big area below there is really going to be a special exhibit area, and that's about 2,800 square feet of space that we can work with for special exhibits. So we're excited about that, and we think it's going to give us a lot of flexibility in the future. And if we go ahead, and again, you can see on this drawing, we're renovating about 12,000 square feet. The bulk of it is the main museum area. We're adding about 13,000 square feet on the upper level and about 11,000 on the lower. And by the time we're done, we're going to have really about 36,000 square feet dedicated to the museum and impact lab and all the other things that go with it. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. Just a quick glimpse. This is if you would be standing at the top of the steps. This is what we envisioned. This is the entrance to the museum. You can see a welcome desk. Behind that welcome desk will be the Docents Lounge. And you can see a sign up there that says Impact Lab. And that really is the way that you get to the current Kaplan-Feldman building. And so this is what we think it'll look like now. We're in the process of bidding and getting a final cost, but we're excited and really think it's going to be a beautiful facility that has an impact in St. Louis. I just wanted to see if, Lori, do we have any questions about the building? I'll take a couple because I want to be sure we keep moving on. Is there anything we want to answer about the building?
There are no questions as of right now about the building, but if anyone has questions about the building, you can type them right now, or you can type them as we go through the exhibit design. Again, feel free to add your questions and we will address them when it fits in our presentation.
Thanks. And that's right. We'll be happy to, how many square foot of special exhibit area? It's just under 3,000 square feet. It's about 2,800 square feet, that space right there. So we are excited. And it will be, we'll be able to bring in high quality special exhibits, temperature control, the whole 9 yards, which is something we've always needed. So, okay, with that's all. And if you have questions about the building.
Another question,
okay.
Will you please explain what's in the Impact Lab?
That will be something we talk about next week. The Impact Lab next week's session is about the Impact Lab, and we'll be addressing that next week. So thank you for your question. I'll push it off and hopefully keep everybody excited about the answer. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Dan, who will take us through what I think is an exciting, exciting maybe isn't the right word, but I think an exhibit that's going to be very reflective of the quality of the work of the team and reflective of what we want to accomplish as the St. Louis Holocaust Museum. So Dan, to you.
Hello, hello and welcome everyone. I'm going to sort of take us through the museum, and I just want to say that the rest of the staff, Amy, Diane, Lori, feel free to chime in whenever you think it's appropriate, or if I missed something or misspoke. So let's move forward. I want to say a little bit about process first. The museum staff has been meeting weekly with a team representing Gallagher Associates for months, for many months. Their team includes numerous members who've worked on Holocaust museums and also World War II related projects. And some of the tech staff are children or grandchildren of survivors. One of their consulting curators worked on the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York, and with Michael Birnbaum with the Holocaust Museum in Skokie. So they really come not only, of course, with their design background, but really caring about the content of our museum. With all of their expertise, they still consider this our museum, deferring to us, looking at our collection, looking at our survivor community, looking at our artifacts. So the museum truly represents the St. Louis Jewish community. This is an overview of the main exhibition. You can see the size and something of the layout, some sense of the relative space of the rooms as you move from the salmon area into the blue area, then into the gray area, moving through the museum, entering in the lower right off of the museum lobby. So let's look at the other view. So this is again that same space seen from above. The experience will begin with an introductory film. Will be a media experience, which will set the emotional tone for the museum visit. It will focus on the stories of individual survivors and their families, and it will provide a sense of what life was like before the Holocaust, the richness and diversity of the culture, daily life of the Jewish people throughout Europe and the former Soviet Union. The emphasis will be on life, not death, again, in order to give the visitor a moving impression about what ultimately and tragically was destroyed. You see on the screen some images of that experience with central seating, 3 screens that images will fade in and out, veil-like images that will then become very clear, then fade. They really talked about this as being very poetic in its way and almost dreamlike in its way, though you will see flashes again of real people leading their everyday lives, their religious life, their cultural life. Diane, do you want to say something about artifacts here?
Sure. This is the very exciting part, is to go through our collections, our photographs, our artifacts, our documents, starting here with the introductory media experience. And many of you, I know, use those photographs that are outside in sort of the beginning of our current museum. Many of those photographs will be part of this experience, as well as many, many others from scrapbooks and collections that have not been put on exhibition. And as far as artifacts, one item that has not been on exhibit but you've probably seen on the artifact spotlight is the 17th century Italian Sabbath lamp. That will be in this space also.
You can see it in the blue there, yes. So something I just want to say before we enter the museum proper. I meant to say even before this, people still seem to think that this may not be entirely a Holocaust museum, that it may also be or instead be a museum of tolerance. This was never going to be a museum of tolerance, but I think perhaps that misunderstanding goes back to the very earliest days of this project, where there was talk about a center for social justice. And while it wasn't intentional, it was sometimes spoken of as equally a destination to the Holocaust Museum. As soon as we initially spoke to members of the community, that idea went away of giving it equal weight or frankly, close to significant weight. All of the people we spoke to strongly said, this must remain a Holocaust museum. And as you'll see, this still is a Holocaust museum. We'll talk about different ways that the museum is different than our current museum, but the truth is, in some ways, it's the same because it's telling the same story. Jewish life before the Holocaust, through 1933, through 1945, and survivors rebuilding their life. The historical facts remain the same. We just have more space and more opportunities to enlarge on telling that story. So let's begin with Area 2, which will cover, it's that whole salmon pink area is Area 2, which is the history of the Holocaust, a detailed chronological overview of the events of the Holocaust, beginning with the rise of Nazism and ending with the Jewish return to life following liberation and again, the rebuilding of lives. So this is an overview of the historical events of the Holocaust. It will be very interpretive, and you'll hear a lot of individual survivors' voices and multiple perspectives, and that storytelling method will be the device used throughout the exhibition. The history will be seen sequentially, chronologically, and again, tell the history of the Holocaust. One of the elements, as I say, that will make us unique is the use of local testimony. And to repeat, that will be used throughout in many of the areas, not just the St. Louis Survivors Gallery, but selected and curated appropriately to bring to life almost all of the galleries and areas within the permanent exhibition. Some of those oral histories will thread through the entire exhibit, and we're sort of in the process of making those selections. But think of the people who in our current museum show up a lot. We'll probably have Gus Schoenfeld. We'll probably have Leo Wolf and several other survivors that you could track through that thread through the entire exhibit. I'm going to be using titles for these areas, these galleries. Those are really placeholders now. They're just quick titles and dates. Those could change. That's part of the iterative process. And again, those are just placeholders for now. So 2.1 will be in its way a continuation of the media experience, focusing on life before, with the same takeaways. Emphasis on the diversity of Jewish communities living in Europe and the Soviet Union, how multifaceted they were, with images and artifacts representing family life, cultural and communal life, schools, clubs, organizations, Jewish contribution to the arts and sciences, Jewish military service in World War I, and again, celebrating holidays and traditions. Let me also say, somewhere at the beginning here, we will have statistics, a graphic representation of Jewish populations at this time before the Holocaust. Diane, do you want to point out maybe one or two artifacts that may highlight this area?
Sure. Sure. Whereas in the introductory media experience, it is media. It's just a visual of photographs or various things like that. Starting in 2.1, we get to start actually bringing in artifacts. Some of the ones that we do have on exhibition now will probably, I've suggested that we reuse, such as the shofar that is on exhibit now from Leo and Sarah Wolf. But many of the paper items have been on exhibition for a very long time, so we want to sort of rotate in some new items. For example, we have some embossed pewter Havdalah cups or beakers from a collection that's never been on exhibition. We'd like to include those. German school books, tinnies, and if you've heard me talk about our collections before, you probably heard me talk about that. Those are the little pressed metal things. Think of the pressed coins that you can get at various sites today that people put on their walking sticks. And so we have a huge collection of that. And people's diplomas, wedding certificates, various things like that that talk about regular life. And then as Dan mentioned, some things from World War I, people who proudly served Germany or Austria or wherever during the First World War. And some of these items will be what we're calling activated artifacts. And I might be jumping the gun a little from Dan's
No, please.
Agenda on this. But these activated artifacts are ones that will have not just the artifact there, but will have photographs associated with it, possibly an oral history, possibly quotations from either our community survivors or various other things. So, for example, some of the military papers and medals from the Bergman collection could be one of those. Or if you remember Robbie the Bear, who made a short but impressive debut on loan, he might come back and talk about, that would be activated to talk about children in this period before everything changed.
So one other thing I could have said earlier about process, probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I kept saying, when are these people going to come and look at our archives? And all in good time. And I don't think Gallagher and team ever realized just how much impressive material we had. They finally came out and were kind of aghast at how much we had and had to rethink how to work our own artifacts into the permanent exhibit. They came out once, they photographed a lot of material. They made a date to come back again. That was mid-March, and they never came. Diane and Lori could talk extensively about what's been emailed to them, what's been sent to them, proportions, sizes, photography, so that they will know the richness of our collection as we move through this process. 2.2 will be devoted to history of anti-Semitism. Now, anti-Semitism will be introduced here, but it certainly will play a large role in many other places throughout the museum. The key takeaways will be that anti-Semitism did not start with the Nazis, that acts of violence and prejudice have been experienced by Jewish people around the globe for centuries. It will look at some of the major tropes and stereotypes that Nazis used to demonize Jewish people that were based on historical roots. So the idea of deicide, the idea of Jew as wanderer, the idea of Jew as well poisoner will be coupled with information about the so-called scientific ideology of race in the 19th century that coupled with the more traditional forms of anti-Semitism. There'll be reference to economic resentment, the association of Jews with communism, and as I said, those 19th century belief in eugenics. One of the artifacts here will be a copy of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the forged document that implied there was a conspiracy of Jews to control the world. It's very disturbing that we're hearing that same trope and canard to this day. Let's go on to 2.3, the rise of Nazism. So it's going to sound like I'm going through the history of the Holocaust, because I am, but it's not like we went through a history and picked out points. We went through the chronology with the lists that all of us took a lot of time combining of our artifacts, of our appropriate testimonies, and then worked through the history, thinking about how best our own artifacts and images could express that history, could tell that history. So the takeaways here would be how and why the Nazis came to power, the mood of Germany post-World War I, and the events of the era that created the sort of a fertile field for the Nazis and Hitler to gain power. Get reference to the Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Republic, again, the rise of Hitler and the creation of the Nazi Party, the rallies noting that Hitler was appointed chancellor in January of '33, not elected. Greg had his I voted button. We all should have that by the end of the day. Another main topic here will be propaganda. Like anti-Semitism, propaganda will just be introduced here, but there'll be elements about propaganda throughout the permanent exhibit. We'll talk about how the Nazis used propaganda to infiltrate all aspects of society, to shape ideas, negative propaganda using anti-Semitic tropes, but also positive propaganda. What was the ideal Aryan type? Indoctrination of Hitler youth, manipulation of the press and radio to emphasize Nazi strength. Diane, any artifact you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I know that one of the items currently on exhibition, which is from the Deutschland Erwacht, that volume that has that huge pull-out photograph that's been manipulated to show a crowd. We probably will go put that through conservation and either use that again or include it, or at least a facsimile of it. We have a 1933 edition of Mein Kampf that we would probably use, as well as various things, especially about German propaganda associated with everything from German high school diplomas to wedding certificates to all sorts of things. Postcards, we have a lot of photographs that were part of what they called cigarette photographs. So, you know, if you bought tobacco, these photographs came into them, and it was collect all, thousands of them. So those kind of things. And obviously we have a lot of material about Hitler Youth, so that idea of using propaganda and indoctrinating people will all be used in this section.
So 2.4 will cover the Nazis in power. That'll be from 33 to 39. A whole lot of years to fit in, but we're working on that. And let me also say with these divisions, there may end up being some things in 2.4 that might bleed into 2.3 or bleed into 2.5. So again, with we're just going back and making everything fit. Key takeaways would be once the Nazis were in power, how they worked to target and alienate Jewish populations, discriminatory legislation, leading up to and including Kristallnacht in November of 38. At the time, Jews realized this wasn't going to get better, this was only going to get worse. In this area, we would focus on book burning, the early boycott of Jewish businesses, laws designed to deny Jews access to economic and social institutions, the Nuremberg race laws, and there would be reference here to other groups targeted, the Roma, Jehovah's Witnesses, individuals with disabilities, homosexuals, and the opening of the first concentration camps in 1933. After Kristallnacht, this area will include Jewish attempts to flee, countries of escape, and the international reaction. This will include the experience in Shanghai, in the Philippines, and also the Kinder transport to the UK. The Evian Conference. Again, I told you this was really a chock-full area that's going to take a lot of decision making. The SS St. Louis, Anti-Semitism in America at the time, and the British attempts to restrict Jewish immigration to Palestine. The Anschluss and the 1936 Summer Olympics, the Munich Conference, and the German desire for Lebensraum as they reach out and feel they need more living space to expand. You know, Diane mentioned one or two, but this is a chock-full area.
Oh, this one has so many. We have a lot about the 36 Olympics. We have a lot about the SA. We have that idea of starting again, of trying to prohibit people from having their profession or doing that sort of thing. We've got all kinds of letters and documents about that. Lots of passports and Kindercarts and yes on the annexation of Austria and various things like that, as well as a large number of potential oral histories to draw from.
And something like the bell from the Olympics might be one of those articulated, expanded artifacts. Correct?
Yes.
A lot of them
Correct.
really could serve that way. 2.5, the invasion of Poland, the start of World War II, September 39 to May of 41. As the Nazis continued to expand their empire, they made attempts to implement Jewish persecution in the occupied territories, ultimately leading to deportations and the creation of ghettos and labor camps. Broken down, the establishment of the ghetto system. What were the ghettos like? Ghetto administration, the Judenrat, Jewish councils, and how Jews reacted, what they did in terms of self-help, helping each other, forms of imprisonment such as labor camps. This is the period when Auschwitz is first built. We will probably use the Lodz Ghetto as a case study here. And we will have the model of the Lodz Ghetto that we currently have will be in this gallery space. This area will also cover the Third Reich moving further, occupying other countries, invading Western Europe, and how the Jewish populations of these places reacted to the occupation. I think the ghetto model will be a key artifact in that area, and we were pretty adamant that we wanted it in a way that it could be used on tours. On 2/6, the onset of mass murder, June 41 to December 1944. So June 41 should resonate as the date of the invasion of the Soviet Union, the story of the Einsatzgruppen, the story of Babi Yar, and other mass killings. And then the implementation of the final solution, the Vance Conference, the creation of the killing camps, and the deportations across Europe, comparing the different countries, Hungary, France, how the Dutch Jews were treated, the Denmark story, and what that ordeal of deportation was like. This would also have information about Theresienstadt, the model ghetto. We'll also have information about ghetto uprisings and partisan units. So the deportations through life and death in the camps, medical experiments, camp uprisings, and the world's reaction. This, I'll turn it over to Diane in a second. This gallery will also have a very large digital map that will serve multiple purposes about the movement of during the war of the military and other statistics. It's still under discussion, but it'll be a very large, very user-friendly, multi-purpose map. Diane?
Yeah, this one is another one of those that, you know, we have so much, such a rich grouping of material to use in this area. Obviously, the uniform that's on exhibition now, the child's shoe from Auschwitz, will be there. Various of the Star of David patches will be there. The Einsatzgruppen photograph, the one that's from Yad Vashem, if they will give us new permission to use that one again. And then the one that shows Mendel's father. We also have some things that have not probably been seen. We have a Nazi Party member book from this period that we might use, as well as for example, a handbill from St. Louis to stop Hitler. I think that one has been on. And we actually have a few art pieces, paintings and drawings that we could use in this area also. This one is definitely a wealth of material that can be used.
2/7 is encountering the camps, the end of the war in 1944, issues around liberation. As the Allied powers encounter the camps and the full extent of the Nazi regime's crimes become apparent to the rest of the world, this will include death marches, conditions and testimonies. This area is going to have a lot of oral history. Had we not been dealing with COVID-19, we would have had, and I hope we still will have, an entire exhibit about liberation based on local artifacts and oral history testimonies. Much of that will be used in the permanent exhibit. Also, bringing the perpetrators to justice. This area will include the Nuremberg Trials. A lot of stuff, again, from the show. Anything in particular, Diane, you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I do. Some of you have seen me show the goat's skin fur-lined jacket from a liberator who was from this area, part of the Rolling W, and on the back of it, it says the Missouri Kid. He was part of the liberation of Ohrdruf. We also have, from a local liberator, a cremation disc that came from Nordhausen. We have the new Margaret Burke-White photograph of Camp Liberation. We have AP photographs from Buchenwald Liberation. And this is another one of those. We have a wealth of material from liberators that have given material to us, as well as, and Dan mentioned the Nuremberg Trials. We hoped to reuse the SS medical jacket and many of the items associated with both Hetty as a translator for those medical trials and Whitney Harris as a JAG at Nuremberg.
Lori, could you indicate where the area 3 is? So it's the bluish gray area, blue, I guess. This is another element that I think will make our St. Louis Holocaust Museum distinct. It's an entire area, significant area, that's devoted to perspectives and roles within the context of the Holocaust. If you think of something, almost all of the perspectives and roles will be part of number 2 of the 2 areas. You're going to hear about perpetrators. You're going to hear about collaborators. You're going to hear about bystanders. You're going to hear about survivors and victims. But this area will give us an opportunity for a deeper dive into select case studies within those groups. And something that came out of our discussions was the role that choice played in some of these roles. Would you choose to be a collaborator or a bystander? When does being a bystander bleed into being a collaborator? When does being a collaborator bleed into being a perpetrator? And what are the choices people made to not be a bystander, but a rescuer or an upstander? So these are really interesting ideas that, as I say, we can use this significant area to dive into those questions. And some of the things we thought about sort of belonged under 2 categories. And with our process, our iterative process, this is an area that we're still discussing quite a bit. So what will be in that area? 3.1, bystanders, collaborators, and perpetrators. Perpetrators could not have committed the atrocities. The Holocaust would not have happened without the collaborators and the inaction of bystanders. So looking again at some case studies of how that happened, individuals or groups. We thought of maybe looking closely at the Arrow Cross in Hungary, or a deeper dive into Adolf Eichmann, or communities that helped, like Le Chambon, or the French police, who largely didn't. This would be a place, for example, to put our capo jacket. Capos get a bad rap, but a lot of our oral history testimonies talked about capos who also did the right thing, who went out of their way to help people, who warned people ahead of some danger. So capos, again, get this really negative, for good reason when they act badly, but it's somewhat ambiguous. And we hope that this area will show these ambiguities and bring them out in ways that will really leave people thinking. What options did these people have? You know, we often talk about choiceless choices in that gray area where there was no right answer. What do people do? How did individuals and groups cope? 3.2 is upstanders and resistors. We have some people from our own community, Natalie Abramovich, but we would also look at people like Janusz Korczak, perhaps. I think we'd like to include Karl Lutz, who worked together with Wallenberg, but Lutz lived briefly in St. Louis and studied in Missouri, so we'd like to take advantage of that local connection. Other groups of resistors, the White Rose, etc., would be included here. 3, 3. Liberators. The American GIs, the other Allied forces, how did they react to that traumatizing experience? They felt they needed to document what they saw with photographs and letters, what they'd seen, in order to bear witness. So again, lots of oral histories here about those different reactions. 3, 4, victims. How did individuals react to the efforts to dehumanize them? There's a lot of discussion still of this area of survivors who talked about other members of their family who did not survive. This would be an opportunity to look into that situation, and also to look into other victim groups. And also survivors, 3, 5. What people did to survive, taking that deeper dive into individual stories, stories of resilience, the drive to survive under these circumstances, the complicated, bittersweet experiences they went through at the end of the war. Lori, I think you used the expression you heard, was it surviving,
which was
right
in the Soap Myth.
Right. And to again look at these in greater detail. Lots of people from our own community we could focus on here. Diane, do you want to mention any particular artifact?
You've mentioned several of them already, but certainly the capo jacket, the whip that's currently on exhibition could be used in this. Some of you have seen me show the Jewish police Warsaw, the hand stamp, which is not a very common item in any museum. We could use that. We have resistance documents, and one that I recently actually found and found again and then retranslated is actually a letter from Himmler talking about guerrilla groups fighting in the higher Julian Alps. Those kind of things would be in these areas to sort of lead to the further discussion and the deeper dive into it.
And I just want to chime in. As you can see, the numbers that Dan referenced for the galleries are different than what is here. And this is just showing an example of our process, that this slideshow was from a presentation in May, and between May and now, we really delved into the relationship between the different groups, and the order or exact placement of these galleries has switched around a little bit. So that is why the numbers that Dan was referencing does not match what's here on the slideshow.
Let's go back and look at the overview to see 4. So this is the St. Louis Holocaust Survivors Gallery. All St. Louis survivors will be named, listed in this gallery. They're looking at creative ways to do it with us. I think they have Diane looking for survivors' signatures. But if we have survivors who we don't have their signatures, their names will be in this gallery. It will focus on communicating hope and meaning through the stories of our local survivors. There'll be about a dozen stories highlighted, but those testimonies will rotate and change. This way, people who return to the museum will hear other stories, and we'll cycle through all of the stories from the oral history that we have. It really will focus and highlight the oral history collection. So it'll also talk about the importance of collecting those memories and preserving that legacy. So it will be an overview of the St. Louis Holocaust survivors community. This is a work in progress. We saw this drawing last week. We'll probably return to it this week. You could see the flow of the room. There was a discussion on having 2 benches or 3 benches. This is the 2-bench option, which allowed more flow of people around it who could also be looking at the monitors. And again, you can see how the walls will show the rebirth, the richness of the resilience of the community. Someone asked a question which indicates I forgot something important, which I know is here.
2.8.
Is it in 2.8? Oh, so it's all the, yes, my apologies. Yeah. I guess I don't need to go back to it in my notes to tell you that there'll be a significant area about the establishment of the State of Israel and the important role that played for survivors and the important role survivors played in the establishment of the state by the United Nations in 1948.
So I'll just chime in also in the 2.8, the gallery that's called Life After. A lot of the items that are currently on exhibition that don't have conservation or preservation problems, we will be reusing in this one. I particularly love, and so did the Gallagher team, Leo and Sarah Wolf's suitcase that's marked Missouri with a Y, and that could be a potential activated artifact, one of those items that other things sort of revolve around and focus on. A lot of material that we have about the DP camps will also be in there, as well as Dan mentioned about establishment of the state of Israel.
So I literally skipped a gallery. My apologies, and thanks for bringing it to my attention. There is the richness of that story of the DP camps, decisions about whether to go home. Was there home to go back to? This might tell that story of Laurie's uncles, great uncles, of returning to their town and being murdered after the Holocaust. And that sense of where to go, what to do, how to just make those first steps in the rebuilding of one's life. And other countries' unwillingness to take the refugees yet at this point. So a crucial area that I missed. Back to the more positively assertive St. Louis Survivors Gallery, which would be followed by a closing media experience that will bookend the opening media experience. We'll explore the legacy of Holocaust survivors, their rich lives, their families. Think of some of the images in that last area that Diane just mentioned, but now think of them with home movies and quotations, and really again showing the vibrancy of the survivors. Not all happy, not all, joy. There's still the element of remembrance, the establishment of Holocaust remembrances like Yom HaShoah, but again, bringing back together the survivors having rebuilt their lives, and quotations from survivors, reflections on what it means to be a survivor, what they hope to be their legacy. Finally, 6.0, which is a visitor reflection area. And it will be, I'd say after our last meeting, it will be a place for contemplation. There will be sort of conceptual abstract imagery on the wall at the left, but it's still very much under discussion. The idea is that it be a contemplative atmosphere, a place to catch your breath, a place to sort of think about briefly what you've seen, and a transition between the activity and the liveliness of the rebirth to moving on to other parts of the museum. So still very much under discussion. And that concludes our tour. We did talk about maybe even having some artifacts in the closing area, but that's uncertain at this point.
So Lori, do you want to work us through the questions that we've received so far? One of the things I want to point out, this is Don Hannon again. If you look at this, the indentation is not by design. It's a pillar that supports the building, and we have to work around it. So we would love to be able to open that space up, but it's not possible. So in case anybody was wondering, why would they do that? It's something we have to work around. So anyway, Lori, do you want to start with some of the questions?
Yes. All right. First question. How does this space compare in size to the current museum?
Oh gosh, the current space is probably about, it's probably about double, if not maybe a little more. It's about double, let's just say double the current actual exhibit space, because it will take up the whole museum, the office where the offices where change begins with me, and then the auditorium.
All right. Next question, which several people asked, is how many people can fit in the intro media experience? And I have the answer for that. So it is currently the opening experience would be 30 to 40 people according to code. The closing media experience would be 30 to 35, but again, that may vary with the final design. There would not be seating for that many people, but the design of the experience is not required that everyone stay seated. And there was also a question about how long would they be in here? And the word was used, someone used the word video room to describe this space, and it's much more, it's not a video. It's images coming in and out, and the video designer said it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. That if you are the first docent and you want to get your group through, you can spend a couple minutes and move on. If there's groups ahead of you, or you are a person on your own, really immersed in it, you could be, spend 10 minutes there. But there is no start and end. It's constantly coming and going.
And of course, all of the numbers about how many people in a space might be impacted by social distancing. So.
Next question, will Learning Center remain part of the title?
I'll answer that. We are in the process of discussing the final naming of the museum, and that will be determined at a later date. I'm sorry not to have the answer for you, but that's where we are in the process.
All right, next question. Will the movie about concentration camps and the map with German occupation of countries be included in the museum?
Have we made a decision on that?
I think the map part is actually going to be put into the map, the interactive or the multi-purposed map that's in 2.6. I don't know that we've talked about the video.
I know they noted it and watched it and timed it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And also I've requested a lot of maps. Let me,
please,
one
Lori
example,
mentioned what I skipped about maps. The small maps.
So here, this is an example of what they used in, their deck of showing us the design of, to show us the area that we're talking about. We've asked to have something similar throughout all of the galleries in the museum to show what country in Europe or what country in the world the material is talking about, to have a little, something like this. Dan, did you want to say more about maps?
No, we will, no, but everyone seems very eager that there be good maps and usable maps.
All right. Next question. How much of the display will be hands-on with visitor participation?
If we do have the testimonies throughout, that will be participation, the most participation. When we talked about the St. Louis Survivors Gallery in our recent conversation, we are all not sure if that's going to be something you have headphones on, something you push, something that's activated by touch or by someone even coming close to it. So a lot of those issues are not resolved yet.
All right. Will there be chairs or benches to sit on throughout section 2?
We are in the process of identifying the location for benches. And that's a problem. I don't know that I haven't seen anything specific to an area yet, but I would think yes, there would be.
Will there be any need or availability for some sort of device for self-guided tours?
Have we talked about that?
We have not yet.
Yeah, I think it's one of those items to be determined. One of the things I guess I'm gonna ask a question of the team. Can one of you guys, Dan or Lori or somebody, talk about how we're going to be bringing new technology into the museum to help with the user experience?
We'll see that it's certainly in the media experiences at the beginning and end, and the map, which is going to be a very sophisticated digital map. Someone may be able to add, going to the audio tour. The goal, one of the chief goals of this expansion is to be able to serve as many people in as many ways, with the museum becoming even more of a destination for a much wider area. So having said that, I can't imagine we would not want to be able to give the drop-in visitor the opportunity to have some sort of audio tour or something on their phone that would guide them through.
Right. Yeah, I'll just chime in on that too. One of the things that we had planned to experiment with the Liberators exhibition that is postponed is something called Guide by Cell, so that you don't have to actually pick up a device other than your own device, and that is dictated because of the pandemic and many other reasons, so that people would actually either call in or just activate something with their phone and they listen to it on their phone. So that's a possibility too.
All right, next question. I think this one's going to be for Don.
Okay.
Can you explain who is the governing authority for the museum? Who is making decisions on everything? Can we get in writing the membership of the various committees?
The ultimate fiduciary responsibility for decisions about the project rests with the Federation Board of Directors. And the task force is providing an oversight role in this process as well. So.
And do you want to say again who was on the task force?
Sure, sure. The task force is chaired by Ted Isaacs. Members include Myrna Meyer, Michael Litwack, Fran Poger, Steve Gallant, Carol Steinberg, and Greg Yowitz also participates on the task force as well.
Vera.
I'm sorry, Vera and Vera Emmons. Sorry about that. Thank you. We are looking maybe adding a few members soon. So.
And in response to wanting in writing the membership of the committees?
I just stated it. I mean, it's this. We're not hiding. I just said what it was. I mean, I'm not. So.
All right. Will the picture of the African-German jazz musician be included?
I'd say yes.
Ooh, I say yes too.
I would. Yeah, I think the one thing is there's still a lot of decisions that have to be made, and so specific content decisions. I think there's strong opinion on the team, which will probably come true, but I'd be a little. I think we have to be, until final design, we won't know for sure what everything's in and what's not. So.
But with that caveat, an image that's so widely used.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, yes, yeah. You guys know better than I. Mine's a general caution as we still have a long way to go down the road. So.
Okay. How many students will the museum be able to hold?
That's a good question, because obviously it's a much larger space. It said specifically students, right?
This one
Right.
said students, and then
Right.
another question was school groups.
So same answer. We are thinking, and there will be a lot of input on this, of different kinds of tours that we can give in addition to a standard traditional tour. We deliberately insisted that there be several spaces through the museum where even larger groups can gather, with the thought that there might be a docent speaking, then students might look on their own, then regather in the next gathering area. The docent would speak, and there would be a combination of self-exploration and the docent. Again, this is in addition to traditional touring. We've already talked, there's a little cut through, so one docent could start in area 3, while the other docent starts in area 2. So another option we've talked about, which some other museums do with success, is putting docents at stations, which we did some of, but it would be a more formal thing than, we've got a huge group stand in different areas of the museum. It would be a more thought through official station situation, in addition to the other forms. So numbers are hard to say, because with the larger space, we can accommodate more people. But if we're keeping tour groups going, we'll have to estimate what that number would be, so that they're all moving, in a productive, and they're getting the best possible experience from the museum.
Other than survivor stories, what kind of interactive activities are included?
The map will have an interactive element. And that may be it. For someone chime in.
Would you not have
Yeah,
some
I
of
don't think-
with the oral histories and things like that? Would there be some interactivity there too?
Right. But it was in addition to the testimonies.
Oh,
so.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There's some discussion in that gallery and also in the concluding gallery or in the reflection gallery, there may be some interaction there, but we really haven't discussed it specifically yet.
Lots of ideas, nothing specific yet.
Okay. With all of the added material, how long would you expect a tour in the new museum to take?
You know, I was just speaking about that with someone this morning. I don't mean to kick these questions down the road. If they were going to have the full experience, they might need longer than we now give them. But I was discussing this with someone at another Holocaust museum. And what they do is they don't all get the complete full experience. So they might not go to the impact lab or, you know, so I can't really answer that at this point. We'll have to balance how long it takes to effectively get through with what educators and schools are willing to time-wise give us.
Is the blank white space only accessible to staff docents, or can patrons cross through to other galleries?
You can cross through to other galleries, correct?
There's, I assume you're talking about this, and this is sort of a gathering place, a hallway, and that will be open for everyone.
I mean, there is a logic of going from 2.1 to 2.2 to 2.3, etc. But there is the freedom. You'll notice that little notched space there. So you could go to 3 and look at the roles and responsibilities area. So, you know, it's not like IKEA. You have more freedom.
Right, it's not like IKEA.
And that's something that I requested. It's, you know, we can start with more students here in the intro, and then if we to break into groups to get more students through the museum, some can cut through to 3 right here and do this part first, while others start chronological. Will there be space for students to eat lunch?
Yes. Actually,
The classroom.
the classrooms will do double duty and will be section D there. Those 2 will be. We can open it up. Each classroom will have a sink in it, and we will be putting an appropriate flooring in there so that it can be cleaned easily. But that was one of the things we did want to provide that space. So the classrooms will have to do double duty.
And there's the outside memorial garden, right, Don?
Yeah, I don't think at this point, I don't see I mean, there'll be a nice walking space to stretch your legs. We haven't really talked much about how much accessible, you know, I mean, there'll be benches and things like that if people want to sit on a bench, but I think particularly for students, it would be the classroom areas.
What provisions for those who are limited with vision, hearing, or limited mobility will be made?
You know, Don, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that is an area that Gallagher has really started to take a lead on in the industry, and I think that's just part of it is when you finalize the presentation of the content, that will be one of the things that has to be incorporated. I mean, I don't think that, Dan, I'll leave it. You can respond.
He and the team are always bringing up ADA guidelines, as frankly are we. And they're also very, very active in the current situation in terms of how many people can be in a space. They're really keeping track of that, but they're very, very conscious of ADA standards. So.
Yeah, the one thing to remember also is that the new build, the new addition, the first level, will be at the same level as the current museum. You know how it drops down, so they'll be at the same level. You will have, and there's a ramp, you'll notice, between the two buildings. There's a ramp. Laura, if you want to go to the next slide, or whoever's got it, the next slide. Yeah, you can see the ramp in front of area C. That will take you up to the current library space, which is at the higher elevation. So having it on the same level will make accessibility, particularly into the museum and to the multi-purpose room and some of the other areas. And of course, there will be an elevator as well next to the multi-purpose room for access to the lower level.
All right. Is there a theater for movies and presentations?
The double classroom could be used for that, and the multi-purpose space.
Right. The multi-purpose space, again, as I mentioned, will really going to be a pretty, I don't want to say cool because that shows my age, but a cool space, in that it'll have retractable seating, that's automated retractable seating, so you can create a theater style seating for about 225 to 230 people. We're also trying to figure out a way to put a retractable stage in the budget so that we really have a very functional performance area that we can use, and for presentations and even stage performances, which I know are some things that we'd love to be able to do.
That is all the questions I see right now. I'm going to give people another minute if whether I accidentally missed your question or if something you still want to know, please type it.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to thank everybody and try to get the last questions in. Just as a reminder, as a follow-up, you will be receiving another survey, and we really hope you complete it. We will also make this we've taped this event, and we'll make it available for others so we can try to get as many people to see and hear the questions, see the presentation, hear the great questions that were asked, but also respond via survey so we can get as much feedback as possible. Lori, any other questions popped up?
Thank you for your questions, because we will pursue some of those things that when you ask, we realize remain unresolved at this point.
Yes. One of the questions that one of the questions that a staff member asked me yesterday, which was a great question, is what will the address of the new museum be? And quite honestly, I'm so glad that person asked that question, because I put it in front of the building people today, and there's a special process you have to go through to get a special address, a new address. So thank you, Amy, for asking that question.
We have not received any additional questions.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you, everybody. Dan, I want to thank Dan, the staff, for the great presentation. Again, thank you for your feedback. Next week, we're going to be, we'll be talking about the Impact Lab, and I think that while that's less defined than this, we will hopefully be able to have give you some insight as what we want to do there.
So another question came in. Is Impact Lab similar to Change Begins With Me?
That's a great finishing question to kind of seed things for next week, isn't it? How would you respond to that, Dan and Lori or Diane or Amy?
It is an enhanced Change Begins With Me.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of like it's on steroids.
Right.
With interaction.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
And another part of the question, is it not easily accessible from the museum space in terms of natural flow? So it is a separate part. Let me get back there.
If you go back to my, right there.
So here is the B is the museum space. That's what we spent today's presentation on. The Impact Lab is C. And as we said, there's a ramp that makes it accessible. It will be a different experience, and it depends, how long teachers have, we'll figure out how long a tour is, how long the impact lab is, and some may come do both and some may just do one.
Yeah. In addition to the ramp, there's also a short flight of stairs there that you can go up real quickly. Probably similar to what you do when you go, the stairs that you go into the museum right now from the Federation lobby.
And also in addition to the surveys coming out, we'll email the survey tomorrow. And again, the email tomorrow will have all of the links and the dates for all upcoming meetings. So you can reference that. Please send your survey by Sunday. The next meeting is Tuesday, August 11th. We're talking about the Impact Lab. And then I don't have it on this slide, but also Patrick Gallagher will be talking on Thursday, August 13th at 5 p.m. Notice that next Thursday with Patrick Gallagher is a different time, 5 p.m. And again, this will all be in the email.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the team, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.